I'm 74 years old, and I've learned that sometimes the cruelest words come wrapped in a smile. My name is Beatrice. I'm a widow. My husband George left me with enough money to live comfortably in my remaining years, and I really believed, that I'd use it to help my family. To be the kind of mother-in-law, the kind of grandmother to be, that people talk about with gratitude. I was spectacularly wrong. My son Oliver is 34. He's a good-looking man, charming when he wants to be, but he's never been good with money. When he met Monica, I thought maybe she'd be the one to ground him. Instead, they became a team at wanting things they couldn't afford. It started small. Oliver called one October evening, 2019, saying they'd found the perfect apartment. 2 bedrooms, bright windows, in a nice part of town. The rent was $650 a month. He asked if maybe, just maybe, I could help with the first month and security deposit. I said yes. By December, he was calling again. The refrigerator broke. Could I buy them a new one? By February, they needed a bed frame and a couch. Monica wanted to paint the walls, but they didn't have money for materials. I bought those, too. I thought I was being a good mother. I thought this was temporary, that Oliver would get a better job, that they'd get on their feet, that eventually they wouldn't need me anymore. That never happened. For 3.5 years, I paid their rent every single month. $650, like clockwork. I furnished their entire apartment, not with hand-me-downs or budget pieces, but with real furniture, because I wanted them to feel cared for. I paid for Monica's dental work. She needed a crown. That was $1,800. I wrote that check without hesitation. I paid for their car insurance. I paid for groceries when they called in a panic. I gave them cash, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, for emergencies that were never really emergencies. A new phone, a vacation they framed as a family necessity. Clothes for a job interview that never materialized. Cash, always cash, because asking made me feel like a bad mother. In 3.5 years, I gave them $41,200, George's money, the money he left me to live on, the money I was supposed to stretch across my remaining years. And through it all, I told myself stories, that this was love, that this was family, that one day they'd remember what I'd done and be grateful. On March 15th, 2023, my cousin Linda called me. She was excited, almost breathless. She said she'd just seen the most beautiful wedding photos on Instagram. She recognized Oliver and Monica. "Wasn't it wonderful?" she asked. "What a gorgeous ceremony." I didn't know anything about a wedding. I went to Instagram myself and found the photos. There were dozens of them. The rooftop venue with string lights and a full bar. Monica in a stunning white dress with a train that pooled at her feet. Oliver in a tailored suit. Family members I didn't recognize. Friends I'd never met. And a banner across the photos that said exactly what Monica had apparently told everyone. "We got married yesterday, just for special people." Just for special people. I had been paying their bills for 3.5 years. I had furnished their home. I had paid for her teeth. I had given them thousands in cash. And I wasn't special enough to be invited. My hand shook as I scrolled through the photos. I started to cry, and then I got angry. I had a green dress hanging in my closet. I'd bought it specially, had it tailored, spent $250 on shoes to go with it. I'd saved $1,500 to give them as a wedding gift. Money I'd carefully set aside, thinking this was my moment to celebrate my son's marriage. All of that sat waiting for an invitation that was never coming. I called Oliver that night. My voice was steady, which surprised me. I asked why I hadn't been told about the wedding. He stammered. He made excuses. He said it was Monica's idea to keep it small, that it was very last minute, that they were going to do a big family celebration later anyway. None of it made sense. The photos showed a well-planned event with a catering staff and a photographer. I told him I needed to think. I told him I'd call him back. I spent that night sitting in my kitchen, looking at the bank statements I'd saved. Every check written, every transfer. I did the math again and again as if the number might change. $41,200. The next morning, I called my bank and stopped the automatic rent payment. Oliver called me within 2 hours. He was panicked. He said the rent was due on the 1st of April. I told him he'd have to figure it out himself. I told him I couldn't help him anymore. I was done. He tried to reason with me. He cried. He said Monica didn't mean anything by the wedding, that she'd just been impulsive. He said he needed his mother. He said I was being unreasonable. I held firm. What I didn't expect was what came next. Exactly 1 week later, there was a knock on my door. It was late morning. I was in my kitchen making tea when I heard it. Not a casual knock, but the kind of knock that has authority behind it. I opened the door to find 2 people, a man in his 60s wearing an expensive suit and a woman in her 40s with a clipboard and an official badge. The man introduced himself as Mr. Graves, an attorney. The woman was a caseworker from Adult Protective Services. My stomach dropped. Mr. Graves explained, in a voice coated with false concern, that they were there because of some concerns that had been raised about my well-being. He said that his clients, my son Oliver and my daughter-in-law Monica, had reported that I was showing signs of cognitive decline, that I was making erratic financial decisions, that I might not be capable of managing my own affairs. He said they were there to help me. What he really meant was that they were there to take control of my money. He produced a document, a power of attorney form. He explained that if I were to sign it, Oliver would have the legal right to make all my financial decisions, health decisions, everything. Mr. Graves said it would protect me, said it would be best for my own good. I looked at him, I looked at the caseworker, and something in me, some part that had been taught never to make a fuss, never to question authority, never to say no, that part broke. "No," I said, "I'm not signing anything, and I'd like you to leave my house." Mr. Graves' face reddened. The caseworker started to say something about how I might be experiencing denial, a common symptom of cognitive impairment. I told them both to get out. They left, but not before Mr. Graves made sure I understood that they would be back. That I hadn't heard the last of this, that I should reconsider. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I called a lawyer of my own, a real one, a woman named Patricia, who specialized in elder law. I told her everything: the money, the wedding, the unexpected visit, the intimidation. Patricia listened carefully. Then she told me something that made my blood run cold. She said that Mr. Graves had been disciplined before. Years earlier, there had been complaints from 6 different elderly clients. He'd pressured them to sign over power of attorney under the guise of protecting them. Some of those cases had gone to court. Patricia said his methods were predatory. "Did he mention anything about you being incompetent?" Patricia asked. "Yes, he implied it. That's his playbook," she said. "The goal is to make the person doubt themselves, to make them feel like they're losing control. That's when people sign documents they shouldn't sign." Patricia told me to document everything. She said if they came back, I should refuse to let them in. She said to keep a record of every interaction. I hung up and went into action. I spent the next 3 days creating a binder. Every bank statement from the past 4 years. Every check written. Receipts for furniture, for the dental work, for everything. I printed out the Instagram photos of the wedding, the ones that proved they'd planned a significant event while telling me nothing. I took screenshots of every text message where Oliver had asked for money, where he'd claimed poverty while I was bankrolling their lives. I wrote down dates and times. I documented my physical health. I went to my doctor and got a clean bill of health, including a mental competency evaluation. I had that put in writing. I changed the locks on my house. I installed security cameras on my front porch. I opened new bank accounts that Oliver didn't know about, moving my remaining assets there. And I prepared myself for war. They came back exactly 3 weeks later. Mr. Graves and another woman, a different caseworker this time. I opened the door, but only enough to slip through, stepping onto my porch and closing the door behind me. I told Mr. Graves I had a lawyer and that any future communication should go through her. I had her business card ready, and I handed it to him. I told them I was not allowing them into my home and that my answer remained no. The new caseworker looked uncomfortable. She said she still needed to assess my living situation. I told her she could see my house from the street, and that was as close as she was getting. What happened next surprised everyone. The caseworker asked if I would be willing to attend a formal meeting, just the 3 of us and my lawyer, to discuss the concerns. I agreed, but only with Patricia present. The meeting took place 5 days later in Patricia's office. Mr. Graves came in with his paperwork and his prepared speech about my cognitive decline. The caseworker sat ready to take notes. I handed them the binder. I watched their faces as they went through it. The banking records, the receipts, the wedding photos, the doctor's evaluation, the texts where Oliver literally asked me to buy his girlfriend a crown. It took 40 minutes. When the caseworker closed the binder, she looked at Mr. Graves. Then she looked at me, and she said, "I don't see any evidence of cognitive decline. I see evidence of a mother who gave generously and is now setting appropriate boundaries." She said the case was closed. Mr. Graves tried to argue. He said they needed more time, needed a fuller evaluation. The caseworker cut him off. She said her assessment was complete. She would be filing a report stating that no intervention was necessary and that the allegations appeared to be without merit. 6 months later, I learned that Mr. Graves had lost his law license. The complaint I'd filed against him, combined with the complaints from those other elderly clients, was enough. He was done. Oliver called me once, about 8 months after the lockout. He wanted to reconcile. He said Monica had been under stress, that they hadn't meant to hurt me, that they'd made mistakes. I listened. When he finished, I asked him to add up everything I'd given them. I told him the exact figure, $41,200. I told him that money came from a trust my late husband left me, that it was supposed to last me through my retirement, and that he'd spent it like water. I told him that I loved him, but that love doesn't mean setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. I told him I couldn't help him anymore, not financially, not in the way we'd been doing things. If he wanted a relationship with me, it had to be based on something real, on respect, on honesty, on him understanding that I am his mother, not his bank account. He cried. He said I was cold-hearted. He said other families did more for their children. I told him that might be true, but I'm not other families. I haven't heard from him in 14 months. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about that green dress hanging in my closet, if he knows about the shoes, the $1,500 I'd saved to celebrate his marriage. I wonder if he thinks about the woman who paid his rent for 3.5 years while being deemed not special enough for her own son's wedding. Probably not. What I know is this. I'm 74 years old. George's money is still stretching across my remaining years. It's stretching because I'm no longer pouring it out for people who didn't value what I was giving. I changed my locks, and I changed my life. I don't regret 1 second of it.